Is it on?
Oh, we'll go back 15, 20 minutes, usually. 10, 15, something like that. Hello and welcome to the December Mayor's Press Conference. Joining me today is Councilman George Moriarty. Wanted to invite George as he and I will both be transitioning out at the end of the calendar year, which is just a couple days away. I've known George roughly since I moved to town in 1998, so gosh, over 20 years, George.
20 years.
Yeah,
Right.
I'd never anticipated we'd be sitting together at a dais, but here we are.
Here we are. Right.
Here we are. So what we'll do today, I'll go over the business transactions that occurred with your council and committee meetings this month, and then we'll talk a little bit about January when Mayor-elect Bumgars will take over and what you can look forward to on that agenda. So as we review December, on the 6th, we had a council meeting. A couple of the highlights of that, we had a public hearing on a rezoning proposal for Carol Lee Cotton on a parcel of land. A lot of times we get asked about, well, what is Spencer doing for growth? Are we growing or not? This is a great example of a project where there's an entity in town who's interested in building a new facility and getting out of the facility that they're in. There was some ground available that wasn't zoned correctly to put their new construction on, and they worked with City Hall and Alec in the Planning Department and Public Works, and then we talked about it at a committee meeting and went through some recommendations. And so the fruition of that is what you saw on the agenda on the 6th, where we rezoned a parcel of land for a new development to go in. We also did a resolution authorizing a bid as part of the Spencer Substandard Housing Rehabilitation Program. A lot of questions we get asked about is affordable housing and what does the city government do for that. The Rehabilitation Housing Program is an excellent program. If you are lower income and want to know if you qualify for that program, please contact City Hall and they'll get you all the information on that. Another thing that we did was we talked about the Southwest Sewer Extension Project. There's been some houses moved in down on the, It'd be north of the mall, be northeast of the mall. A couple houses got moved into that area, so we did some legalese at the council to get a sewer extension project in there and establish the fees for that. Then the Long-Term Planning Committee, whose focus is looking out into the future, had a busy agenda on December 9th. They looked at the downtown upper story housing grant program that we're preparing, as well as the applications that have come in. We had a nice application from somebody who's potentially going to buy a property downtown and take advantage of some funds from the state of Iowa. We appreciate everybody's commitment to our beautiful downtown district. We looked at food trucks and reviewed and researched different ordinances. Currently, right now, there's no ordinance related to food trucks, but we're in the process of refining one. We did our first reading, and now we'll do a second reading at the January meeting that has some updated terminology in it that Councilman Wenchel requested. Sidewalk Cafes were also discussed at the Long-Term Planning Committee and reviewed. And then again, regulations regarding E and E1 heavy industrial zoning and data center. All of this is in relation to people who either have a business interest or things in our code that we need to clean up when there is an interest, that we can fast track properties and show people where they can and can't go based on their use of business. And we do that to try to keep Spencer moving in the right direction and stay forward. On December the 10th, the day after that, the Finance Committee, chaired by Bill Orison, met. They discussed the capital improvement plan funding strategy, some ideas on how to change the formula for that to better meet the needs of the city, and they discussed the preliminary FY 2023 budget process. Just as a reminder, the council coming up here in January and February will have some in-depth conversations on the budget, and then per state code we have to have that finalized in March. So you'll see that. If you have any questions on that, contact your council people. On December 20th, we also had our second council meeting. One of the highlights there was we accepted the audit of the previous fiscal year by Winther Stave and Company. One of the big things that came out of that audit was reinforced by Rob Sand, who's the state auditor. There's a interpretation going through the auditor's office about what public funds can be used for, specifically related to nonprofit entities. As you know, as a council, we authorize between $200,000 and $250,000 every year to go into community programs. A lot of that money is ending up in nonprofits, either direct or indirect through different funds. And so as the council moves forward during this budget season, they'll have to take that into account and the ruling and opinion of the state auditor and our local auditors as well. We approved the purchase to replace the phone system here at City Hall. We also approved the purchase of 22 new body cameras and server replacements. As Chief Warburton reiterated when we did that the big benefit to this is the speed at which video can be shared with attorneys as well as anybody in the public who requests it. Right now it's a very laborious process of transferring data onto CDs and things of that nature. This new system will be a lot more modern in that. We also set the hearing related to the data center and E and E1 heavy zoning request that we talked about at the committee meeting. We authorized the second filing of the precinct boundaries. We've talked about that, where during the last census we had to shift some ward boundaries around, and none of that impacts the current elected officials, so there won't have to be any special elections on the borders that changed. One of the, I think, most exciting things is that we had a public hearing on the classification, which is new, of a custom meat business. So historically here in town, the only way we treated the processing of livestock was at a large industrial scale. And as we know, there are a lot of towns around us that have smaller family-based operations. A lot of people refer to them more as like a meat locker instead of a processing plant. And we didn't have anything in our code that allowed for that. And with a lot of hard work through planning and zoning, as well as the council, and then it went back to planning and zoning and they refined it, and then it came back to us. And we had our public hearing on what can be authorized as a custom meat business. And so there's different levels, different rules, but the exciting thing is, again, we're preparing to be business ready. That's always been our focus, is to try to establish our zoning and ordinances in such a manner that when somebody wants to put a business here in town, it's not a hassle and a hurdle to do that. We took a motion of support, which I mentioned in the committee, about the Iowa Downtown Upper Story Housing Grant Program through the state of Iowa. So we authorized Northwest Iowa Planning and Development to put that grant application together for one of the people in town who's interested in that. We also did some code upgrade concerning construction permits. So we've had a history of people not knowing when they needed to come in to get a permit. So a lot of these would be smaller projects like a shed or maybe a patio or some construction that goes over either a utility easement or a property boundary. And what we wanted to do was make city staff available for all residents doing those projects, but not have to come in and pay a permit fee if it's a small project. And so initially, the language that we adopted in the last council meeting was a $500 project. Councilman Winchell requested that it got upped to $1,000 because, as we know, $500 doesn't buy today a whole lot of stuff. And so I think you'll see that in the second filing coming up here in January. That'll be increased to $1,000 and below. You don't need to pay a permit fee. We also did our first filing of mobile food trucks and vendors, classified that. We appointed Bob Wittenberg to the library board, who's taking the place of Mayor-elect Steve Bumgars. His term expires on June 30th, 2024, so we thank Bob for that commitment. And upcoming meetings, there'll be a committee of the whole meeting for the budget process on January 4th. And sometime in January, hopefully, there'll be a goal-setting session as well. And as we've said every year, if there's anything that you'd like to see your council work on, please contact them either ahead of or during the goal planning session. It's important. One of the last committee meetings that we had was December 22nd. We had a Public Works Committee, and some big plans were discussed on that. Potential development in the North Y area, expanding the sewer and utilities up in that area for a potential business development, and then the sewer petition on 25th Street Southwest. So the residents on 25th Street Southwest are currently not on the city sewer system. They would like to be. And so the council heard from them, and their request and the recommendation from the Public Works Committee was to move forward to look at putting sanitary sewer. It'd be on the north side of the houses that are on the north side of that street. We ran sewer a couple years ago on the south side. And then also what I would mention is that, I think I mentioned it in my last press conference, but this summer there was a tragic accident that took a life at the Menards intersection, and we made the commitment to look at how we can make that area safer, as well as the Menards and the McDonald's area. We've received preliminary recommendations on traffic flow as well as speed changes from the state of Iowa. Those are state highways, 71 and well, I guess it'd just be 71 in that area, but and 18. So what we will do moving forward into 2022 is to get the final study done from the state, and then work with them on putting in probably, I think you could anticipate some traffic flow changes as well as some speed limit changes to try to make those areas more safe. Upcoming in January, when former Councilman Bumgars, Mayor-elect Bumgars, when he takes over, you'll see the second filing of the Cotton Edition, the second filing, and probably the third filing of the custom meat business. We'll up the code on the permit to $1,000, as I mentioned. You'll also see the final, third and final reading for the vacation of 11th Street with the hospital project, and the connection fees for the Southwest Sewer Project. And so with that, what I would like to do is thank everybody for tuning in. I always say it must be a pretty slow day if you tune into the mayor's press conference, but nonetheless, today's not a slow day because my friend and fellow councilperson George Moriarty is here. So what I would like to do is give the floor to George and have him talk about his experience and anything that he would like to recap in his years of service and looking forward into the future. The floor is yours, George.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I won't get to call you that very much longer. I guess once a mayor, you're always a mayor. Isn't that the way it is?
I don't know what the formality on that is.
I think it is.
Okay.
Once a mayor, always a mayor. And but it's certainly been a pleasure for me to serve the last 8 years in the city of Spencer. We have a tremendous city here, and I feel firmly that with the council we have and the leadership, I think it will continue. I have no doubt. And especially what will make it continue is the staff that we have. The city has terrific department heads. We have outstanding staff that's working behind them and making their jobs easier for them. So as I promised, that we had brighter days ahead. We're already there.
Yeah.
The days started getting longer. The 21st of March, and I've noticed it this morning just a little bit. It's getting a little brighter. So we know there's going to be bright days ahead, at least till June 21st. Then what happens after that? I guess it's going to be up to the new council and new mayor.
Right.
So. But we've done a lot of things have happened in Spencer and during my 8 years, and I only played a very, very small role in that as a councilman at large. But some of the ongoing projects, we got an ongoing project for our sewer projects, and that has been a monstrous undertaking, but it's certainly going to improve things for us in Spencer. And we've been able to take advantage of many grants on that, which has definitely helped. And we also got it done while the interest rates were cheap, and it just was a good time to do it. I'm happy because I just live a block south of West 4th Street, but I'm real happy with the improvement on West and East 4th Street. Those streets have really improved, and since they're a thoroughfare through our city, it's very important. But it's sure nice to drive down there and not be afraid I'm going to lose a wheel or something. Also, we've probably are up to over 18 miles of trail in the city of Spencer that's been added. The most that's been added during that time. And now I'm real proud of what the city has done, and city people have gone for replacing some of the trail out at Stoffen Park. I know that's, we almost wore that sidewalk out there just by people walking on it. I mean, I've never driven by there on a nice summer day that there weren't people on that trail. So I know the community really enjoys that. We've added over 450 new living facilities in Spencer, and we've got more to come. I'm real excited about that, and not only that, they're great living facilities. They really, the people have really appreciated them. We have had a new birthing unit added at the Spencer Hospital that brings people in from all over. I mean, even out of state have come to that. That's a terrific addition to our city. We've added many new business openings on Grand Avenue. In fact, I think the Grand Avenue is just about completely full of those existing facilities that are there. And we've added many new businesses in the outer reaches of Spencer. It's just amazing. You go up Highway 71 North now, it's amazing how many new businesses have sprouted up with other businesses who have left or closed for one reason or another. But I think that's going to be our next real improvement, Spencer, is what we do with North 71 and 18 up there. It's been, that's pretty much, and then we've added some art in Spencer that I've been served on the art committee and space committee, and I'm proud of that. I'm real proud of the mural on the Hanson building. I think it's one of those murals that just really add to the community. It's not a mural that tears down or, adds graffiti I mean, it's just a beautiful mural of the city of Spencer and our surrounding area. Those are some of the highlights that I remember about, and I know there's many more that I've overlooked at the present time. But the biggest thing is that I've gained from being on the council is my friendships, and especially my friendship with you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to miss working with you on a daily basis. I'm sure we'll find some things to work on together.
I think so, yeah.
It probably won't be on a daily basis, and so my 8 years went by way too fast. It really goes by fast, and but it's been a real pleasure, and I want to thank all the people of Spencer that have talked to me about things that they are concerned about in the city and things that the council has worked on, and I think we've done a good job during that time period, and that's about what I had to say.
Well, George, what advice would you give the council moving forward?
Well, the one thing I think the city's going to have difficulty with is the tax situation. And I think they're going to have to be very careful about that. I have a feeling that really you should not have to increase the base on the tax because the property values continue to rise. And with all of our expansion, growth, that should carry what we need. And since we've got every department, I believe every department has their excess capacity of savings that they've had, that they've been able to set aside. So they're all ready for a rainy day, God forbid if that should happen. But the people I worry about are those that are on fixed incomes. There's people that have very, very low incomes out here, and they've worked hard, they've saved, they've got their own home, they got it paid for. And now to have that tax go up to more than what they might be able to pay, that's the people I look for. And I think if they do have to raise it, I think they should find other ways to help those people through that. And I know we do have some situations now, but it can become just impossible for them to maintain their home. So that's the thing. Other than that, we're going to continue to grow as a city, and we'll continue to improve it. I have no doubt about that. We have a tremendous community, and the fair's been a big part of that. I'm real pleased on the fair that they ended up having such a terrific fair that they were able to pick up all the salaries that the people that they took a 35% cut out there, and by the time the fair was over, they were able to pay all that back, and so and the people certainly earned and deserved that. But to show you the caring for the community, for the fair, for them to do that. I mean, how many they volunteered to do that, and that just says a lot about the people out there at the fair. So the community really should support them, and they do support them, and I think that will continue. And that's certainly the backbone of what Spencer's all about, is the fair, and puts us on the map nationwide. So with that, I want to thank everyone for the time that I've grown through this experience. I really have. It's interesting how you can work things out and arrive at a consensus when sometimes when it first starts on the discussion, you wonder how heated it's going to get. But the council works very well at that. So thank you, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. You've become more than just an ally of the city government. You've become a fine personal friend, and I appreciate that.
Well, likewise, George. And with that, I'll share a little story about George and myself and Frank Petska, former council person who unfortunately passed away while in office. This will be a little sneak peek into what I want to do tomorrow. Tomorrow will be my last official press conference where I want to, I'll take you through a little journey of how the sausage is made, maybe give you some perspective into how some of the big decisions are made. But George, do you remember the time that we were going to, it wasn't Wall Lake, Lakeview, I think it was, for a Northwest Iowa League of Cities meeting? And for some reason, Brian Weave always drives.
Yes, he always drives.
He always drives slow, but he didn't go with us that time.
And
so
he's probably got the biggest foot, and yet he drives slow.
That's right. Well, Brian wasn't with us, and so we were in my truck, and I was driving, George was in the passenger seat, and Frank was behind George. And we're heading south out of town, and I don't know if you remember this, but so Frank, what I didn't know, Frank had a hearing aid, and the hearing aid had Bluetooth, okay? So Frank had a family situation where one of his extended family members was going through a little bit of a trial, and so we were asking Frank about that. Well, what George and I didn't know, so if you can picture George, Frank, and I, again, Frank's in the back seat, George is in the front seat with me, we're engaging in this conversation, and in the middle of the conversation, a phone call comes into Frank, and it's one of Frank's family members, and it's on the same topic that the three of us had been talking about. And I'll bet for 8 minutes, probably, 8-9 minutes, the questions that we would ask Frank timed perfectly with the conversation that he was having in his Bluetooth earpiece that we didn't even know about. And so every now and again, some response wouldn't quite make sense, and George and I would kind of look at each other like, "Is Frank okay?" Yeah. And but then the next thing, it would jive just fine. And so we finally get like 8-9 miles down the road, and we hear Frank say, "Okay, well, I'll talk to you after the meeting." And George and I looked at each other, and we looked at Frank, and we said, "Frank, who were you talking to?" You had to know Frank, but I had my hearing aid, Bluetooth. I was talking to, whatever family member he was talking to. And so we've had a lot of fun memories going to those League of Cities meetings. That's probably another aspect of being an elected official that the public really doesn't see, is that the time we take to go, I think, try to sharpen the steel, get ideas from our other fellow elected officials in Northwest Iowa, and exchange ideas, and just try to bring back things from the meetings. And usually, like I said, some staff people go. Brian and Teresa have gone before, and it was usually George and I for sure, and then whoever else would tag along.
And Brian, we had to have our driver.
Yeah, we had to have Brian. He's kind of like our dad, I guess, on the trip. He wasn't really fun dad though, was he? He was more.
He's pretty business.
Yeah, pretty business-like, isn't he? So we like to tease Brian a little bit. But with that bring our press conference for December to a conclusion. And as I like to end all of them, stay safe, be vigilant, and God bless.
Done? 20 minutes, about right on, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah, I know. I'd forgotten about